Hello everyone, this is Riccardo Masini and this is Vlog, and this is, well, you might have guessed it, Peloponnesian War by Mark Herman, GMT Games, the second edition of the game. First one was by Victory Games in the mid-80s. And yes, this is a classic, this is an absolute classic. A solitaire game that is not a solitaire game because, well, everybody knows the main mechanic behind the Peloponnesian War. This means you start with Athens. We are in Peloponnesian War, that is Athens against Sparta in classical Greece, and the essential end of classical Greece, just before the great crisis of Greece and then Alexander the Great. Well, you start leading the troops of Athens and its allies. But if you do not get to a decisive result soon enough, there will be a roll of a die, and based on that roll of a die, you will go the Alcibiades way. That is, you will be exiled from Athens and you end up leading Sparta against yourself, against the situation, the strategic situation that you have just created as commander of Athens. There is a bot that manages the side while you are against it, where you are opposed to it, but and it is a good bot, and in the second edition there have been some refinements, but essentially it is a placeholder because the long-term strategy has already been planned by yourself, so you're constantly playing against yourself and the consequences of your previous actions as leader of the opposing side in the previous turns. This is really a Greek tragedy. I love to call this, I love to call this game that I love as Greek tragedy in its essence, because essentially you are fighting against yourself, just like Athens and Sparta in a fratricide war, almost a civil war of the Greek world. Incredible, and this creates a constant tension in a constant attritional war where no one gets to have a decisive victory. There are battles, but there are not so many battles, and very seldom very rarely they are decisive. Most of the times you will just go around here ravaging the coast of the Peloponnesus, or the lands of Attica, or the colonies there in modern day Turkey, just to destroy the resources of your opponent so that he cannot recruit a good army, and then he does not have a good army for the decisive battle that you're so desperately seeking. But in doing that, oh no, maybe you do not get a decisive result soon enough, and you switch to the other side, and then you have to repair the damages that you have just done. All of this incredible dynamic, incredible exchange, incredible relation and tension between the two players, but it is always yourself. Well, all this with very essential, very simple mechanics that in this second edition are exposed in a rule book that has been written by the late Chad Jensen. And once again, what a loss for the wargaming world, because I have to confess, Mark Herman is a genius designer, but at least in the Victory Games era, I had the first edition of this game that I played as a young boy, and I loved it, but the rule book was really weird, really strange. I had many difficulties in understanding it. Now, with Chad Jensen, with the Chad Jensen treatment, I'm not kidding, you can start playing this game in minutes. Absolutely, it is fantastic. Everything is exactly where it should be and explained in a very accurate and easy and readable format. Absolutely stunning. Stunning are the components of this second edition, that includes also a playbook, and a playbook with scenarios, with small time scenarios, with short scenarios to introduce you to the game or to different phases of the conflict, and also to the consequences of the conflict. There is a scenario full of Athens and another the fall of Sparta, because also Sparta at the end of this war, theoretically the winner of this war, was really weakened. And there is also a two-player scenario, very interesting, absolutely great stuff, so much stuff. Also in the playbook there is an historical essay by Mark Hammond that studied the Peloponnesian War, also for his profession in the US Naval College. Great work here, really. It is I like to call it a mini essay because it is essentially short, but it is very deep. It is the result of his research, of his studies. It's clear, it's obvious, and it's very detailed also with economics, politics and culture of the conflict. Great reading material. There are designer notes, there are all those scenarios, and also another thing, an historical playthrough. A playthrough where every single move is the historical one, and you can see the entire war developing before your eyes. Incredible. So as I said, this game is absolutely different from anything else. All the main mechanics, it's like watching the first steps of mechanics that will become familiar with card-driven games. Interceptions, strand points, point-to-point map. Absolutely, it almost seems like for the people, Mark Hammond's Civil War game, just without the cards. It's just before the cards. You just need the cards, but after that, it's very similar, very familiar. Okay, the inside game balances are different, so many things may be different as a consequence in their effect, but in their nature, many mechanics are very similar, or at least you see the first steps of those mechanics that we will see and will become familiar in card-driven games. So all of these in a game that really gets tension, and there's lots of strategies, of possible strategies, and you might get a bit lost about what to do, what strategies to follow, but it really explains why certain places, certain lines of communications were so important, why Athens had the great idea of going to attack Syracuse, not so great, spoiler, and why that idea was not so great, but why Athens at one point really thought that this was a good strategic move, because it had sense. It just was impossible as an enterprise, but it had sense. If that enterprise succeeded, Athens might have won the war. Anyway, great, absolutely. And if you love classical Greece, this is absolutely the game for you. It has some issues. Yes, there are so many abstractions, some abstractions. The battles are just an opposite role. And yes, we all know Mark Hammond's theory. You have to work on the modifiers. It's not just a die roll. Okay, but I miss a bit of tactical management. Anyway, not having micromanagement really puts you in the shoes of political leaders, not just of military commanders. But if you are seeking about, you're searching for tactical detail, tactical maneuvers, operational details, even detailed logistics, they are not here. Okay, this game does not really represent one by one, event by event, this conflict, but it represents very well, it focuses on the dynamics, on the inner dynamics. But this is the style of the game. This is a very peculiar game, and some might like it, others are mightily bored by this game, mightily disoriented by this thing that you are, okay, now I'm Athens, no, I'm Sparta, no, I'm Athens back again. At the end, I'm always playing to the best of my abilities. It's just another very complicated way of playing at the best of my ability. For some people, this game might be like that, and it is legitimate, because this is not close enough to the style of playing. For other players just like me, this is a stroke of genius, because in a game with 2 bots, and I hate bots, okay, I hate strategic metrics, priorities and algorithms and so on, I get really to play to the best of my ability. The other bot is just me creating an opponent that is very easy to manage to as a bot, but after that I can switch. I will be forced to switch sides, so I will once again play to the best of my ability. It is an enhanced play at the best of my ability. Great. This is a game that you will like, or you will love, or you will hate. It will not be indifferent to you. Also, once again, speaking of mechanics, yeah, there are some, I don't want to say exceptions, but some small rules here and there for historical reasons, for the setting, for the simulation, and you have to keep them in mind. But there is a good deal of material, and so this is good. There's some small errors here and there, but nothing terrible, and it is all documented. So really, as a conclusion, a game to have in this edition if you don't have the first edition, or even if you have the first edition, because great components, great revision of some mechanics, of some inner balances of this game, additional scenarios, all the historical material by Mark Hammond, and after all, this is a classic. In my opinion, this should be in every Wargamers collection, really, also as a piece of game history, because from many of these mechanics then you will have mechanics, the typical card-driven mechanics of later games. Okay, this is almost a windstorm here, but nothing. Maybe it's the spirit, is the ghost of Alcibiades. I like Alcibiades. He was a nice guy. We never knew where he was, in Athens, Sparta, or in Persia. Anyway, so this is Peloponnesian War, a classic, absolutely recommended, a great game, and I'm really happy to have been able to speak about it here on vlog. So this has been my episode, and once again, goodbye to everyone. See you next time, and as always, remember, don't be scared, it's just war games. Ciao!